We actually went in, the Marpol came in, the world understood it. It was implemented by the countries of the world. There was a cost, the industry followed. We are seeing something here where the humanity understands that there is something that is to be done. It's a threat. It also opens up opportunities. There are two parts to it. The threat is to be addressed, and rules, regulations, framework are to be created as responsible nations, and I'm sure that that is exactly what we are talking. When our Prime Minister talks how our country will move forward and be along with the Committee of Nations as responsible nations, then we understand that that's a larger picture. Coming closer to our fraternity, we need to understand that as we move forward, there's a cost, there's a particular roadmap that's to be taken, and there's a commercial aspect to it. I think the people sitting on this dais here needs to really look at it from split point of view. There's an economic part here and there's a commercial part here. So just to set the context, and what I would like to hear from co-panelists here is, look at it from the Indian industry's point of view. We are talking about solutions. Do we have the technological strengths? Do we have the designs and the solutions on one side? Do we have the shipyards and the infrastructure to implement those solutions? These are the matters which we are discussing. But to reach there, to get into the solutions and get into the technologies, again, let's try to divide this whole thing into three separate zones. One is, where is the demand? Who creates the demand? Who wants this? We all say that MSc was saying that we will do this, but can they do it on their own? There's a requirement, there's a global requirement. So when the global requirement comes in its rules and regulations, and you're given a roadmap, by such and such time you need to march on this path, or you're probably out of business, then we actually move in that particular direction. So who will create the demand? The second part is, once the demand is there, are we ready with the technologies and solutions? This is what we should discuss today. And the third part is, once the technologies and the solutions are there, there's a supply side for the infrastructure, land-based infrastructure and fuels or alternate energy sources, which in the session one, which is something which we had discussed. So I think as shipbuilders or designers or shipyards or solution providers here, let's, for the sake of this discussion right now, let's keep the energy part out of it. Let's hope that whatever be it, that energy solution will be addressed. So I would request esteemed panelists to concentrate on, do we have the wherewithal right from the design, solutioning part, and how do we get in with the land-based infrastructure? There have been a few questions, and Pradeep in his initial background had actually mentioned, how do we take care of infrastructure? Are the yards ready here? Can design institutions, both on the passive design side and the active design side, can we actually go in and address these matters? And I would like to, within 1 hour when we close, if we can actually suggest a few demonstrable solutions and to just guide it in that direction. Probably, I think, can we actually say over the next 5 years plus, we can actually have, let's say, tugs in the Indian ports. Can the tugs be of a slightly different vintage from what we are having today? Can we have the near coastal vessels of a particular vintage from what we have now? Can we actually offer solutions for retrofitting? I was pleasantly surprised, last week we were in Varanasi, and I was pleasantly surprised to see the small country boats retrofitted with CNG solutions. There was a Gale floating station with 5 CNG dispenser on the Varanasi river, and the boats were looking much more better and clean. And this was actually happening. So who supported it? Initiatives like the Cochin Water Metro or what Sandith is trying to do, we can actually discuss this more. But at the end of the day, our inputs from this panel should be actually towards policy making, and we need to actually see those policies. And once the policies are there, closer home, we can actually try to align towards those policies. Are we ready for it? Are we ready? If the policies come in, are we ready for it? This is closer home. Internationally, various countries have actually taken policies, have actually implemented. Are we ready for the global roadmap? Companies like Cochin Shipyard just wanted to inform, like we are trying to gain traction in Europe, and we have been fairly successful in trying to offer solutions in the spirit of cooperation. So it is not that a Cochin Shipyard or one company in India or a few companies in India can do it. I feel that there's a larger angle for global cooperation between companies without which we may not be able to move much forward. So with this, not to mix up between the economic part and the commercial part, because the economic part, I feel, it's my view that it's for the state, it's for the country to take care of, because no private enterprise. If there's a commercial viability, the private enterprise is going to walk in over there. But till the commercial viability comes in, there must be policy making, which again, like any other policies, it would be a part incentivization, part penalization. So a combination of both, but setting in a long-term, say 5 to 10 year direction, I think we should actually suggest this to the government, because many times we all think that the government must come in with freebies. I think a little bit freebies can always be asked, but the government's job really is not to come in with freebies, but the government's job is to actually bring in the appropriate policies so that it's like a track. We can get aligned onto that track. So with this, probably I can start off with, I'm not taking any particular point, but then I've seen like Arjun has garnered some things from Europe. So probably Arjun, if you can just open up your views on how you would like to see this an exciting space coming up.
Thank you, sir. I think going back to the one word that you mentioned is cooperation. And I think cooperation is extremely important for shipbuilding, because if you see what is shipbuilding, shipbuilding is assembly. We use workers who process steel, and then we get a whole bunch of people that send in equipments and components, and we assemble it over there. So it's an entire endeavor. If you see a ship construction from 2 years to 3 years, it's an entire endeavor of pure cooperation. Just to take a little bit step back, looking at the big picture, and why is shipbuilding extremely important? If you see in the last 100 years, any country that has gone from a low-income country to a high-income country, I'm not talking about a middling-income country, a middling to high-income country, has done it on 3 pillars. The first pillar is export-led industrial manufacturing. That's the first pillar. And so, which are the countries? They're Japan, China, Taiwan, and Korea. These are the 4 countries. Everybody else has been stuck in the middling income countries. These are the countries that have gone from GDP per capita. 3 out of these 4 had GDP per capita less than India at the time of independence, and today are high-income countries. So first was export-led manufacturing growth. Second, automobile production. Self-sufficient in automobile production for their own country, and then able to export it out. And the third, which is often overlooked, is shipbuilding. All 4 of these countries have a very strong shipbuilding tradition. And this shipbuilding tradition is a tradition that started really after World War II. So in India, if you look at it, there are policies, especially with the PLI scheme, to promote export-led growth, manufacturing growth. We have a very, very strong automobile sector. In fact, it's so strong that we need to import cars. And the third pillar that we need to develop is the shipbuilding system. So based on that, some of the work that we at our shipyard are doing, we have 2 main projects that are export orders from Sweden, the Nordics, and the Netherlands. These are hybrid propulsion ships or battery or diesel electric ships. So in both cases, we're talking about carbon emissions of 50% lower than what the last generation of the short sea voyager was producing. So extremely, extremely efficient ships in that sense. Between these two, I think one particular design interests me, and I think it would be very important for India, would be the diesel electric ships, which run on a system of generators. So, and then they're much more easier to retrofit. So if tomorrow fuels change, you just need to change really the generators, but everything else in the ship remains the same. So this is a system that I would actually think would be a very good system for India to follow. In fact, we are seeing a lot of interest in Europe as well for this type of system that is coming out. So that's really on the type of ships that we are seeing. But going to some of the other questions that have been pointed out in terms of what are the gaps and what are the opportunities. If you look at the design, we're getting a lot of the basic design from Europe. I think there are good design companies in India that are now upgrading themselves to get into the detailed engineering phase of it. But the big lacuna really in India is the ancillaries and the equipments. Today we rely, almost 60% of our entire ship is imported in terms of value. And that is too high a number. And if you look in the situation today where there are supply chain issues because of the geopolitical situation in Europe and the war within Ukraine over there, we're getting a lot of disruptions over there due to inflation, due to trade routes being blocked up. So that's the other area that I see that, and what we do really need to do over here in this country is to incentivize the production of the ancillary units over here. I see Desmi having a stall outside. It's a company that is now starting to assemble their pumps in India, but I think still a lot of subcomponents are coming from Denmark. But I think this is a step forward, and this is really what we need to develop.
Arjun, I think I'll come back. You're making a point on export-led to start off the process here. Let me just go to Sandith, and as a designer and as a company which is actually pushing vessels into the new segments. So both sides, as a designer, and you can also talk in behalf of the fraternity, IMDA, like can we actually produce those designs for the global market? And as a producer of vessels for the local market and for the global market, are we ready? This is a area you could kindly touch upon.
Thank you, sir. So I will talk from the solutions which are possible from on green shipping, starting from the smaller vessels to a bit more larger. Until coastal, I think the last session covered the bigger ships. So before that, I just want to stress that since we are all poor at estimating the present cost of a future issue, which is climate change, that is why regulations and subsidies exist. And when you talk of smaller vessels, at least, it's a solar plus battery which can effectively work in many applications. And when I'm talking in the context that there exists no support from the government for electric boats, unlike FAME scheme which supports electric car, bike, auto rickshaws and buses, in that context it's purely an economical solution. So when you are looking at that, there are many applications like public transport, ferries and tourism boats, where the shift is economically viable and fundamentally driven by the fact that the cost of power from a diesel engine, which is almost 30 rupees per kilowatt hour, compared to a motor using a grid power is almost 10 rupees. And if you put a 70% from the sun, it shifts to 3 rupees. That's the fundamental reason why the OPEX is low. Plus the importance of design. So when we did the solar boat, we realized that half the benefit of the shift was due to the design improvement by making shift to a lighter material, composites, etc., and designing the underwater ship. So the design is so important when you are talking of efficiency and reduction in power, etc. So that's our experience there. But when we shift to a slightly faster vessel, the again, the chemistry has to be slightly different. For example, LTO works better than LFP. And very counterintuitively, once you decide LTO, you have to necessarily have a system which runs at faster speeds, like 12 knots plus, to make it economically viable compared to a diesel boat. I mean, that's the crucial part again. And when you start shifting the weight of cargo, move towards vehicle carrying like ro-ros, which carry 1.5 times the boat weight, then again you need some kind of an LTO. And the larger vessels which we discussed on, which are cargo vessels, which carry 3 to 5 times the weight of the vessel itself. Clearly battery is not a way forward. So it has to be some combination of, in fact, wind itself can contribute 10 to 20%. And that's something I don't see much development happening in the country, and I hope we are working on it, but I'm sure there are many people should work on wind solutions, plus the liquid fuel, and there are interim fuels like LNG, etc., but I still believe it has to eventually go to a clean fuel like hydrogen. Today, it's at $6 to $9 per kg. Even OPEX parity is not achieved. At $3, maybe, yes, you will achieve OPEX parity, but at $1 is when the TCO parity will achieve. And without government handholding, that is not going to happen, as Madhu sir mentioned. And this kind of solutions is where policy support is needed. Once again, I reiterate, there is no support from the government for electric boats, and that has to change soon. I hope it will happen soon.
Can I just intervene for a minute? Yeah. See, essentially, the previous session was on fuels. Now here we are going to talk about, that is based on combustion technology, which has been driving the entire industrial revolution of the past 200 plus years. Maybe there is a time for us to change to non-combustion technology. So it is everything that will have to be brought in, and it is a fit-for-purpose technology that has to come in. With that, I would also like to inform the delegates that it is possible for you to